Here's where it gets really interesting. Other videos might tell you that AI is just a tool, like a hammer or a computer. But there's a fundamental difference that most people miss. Tools typically require you to understand what you're doing to use them effectively. You can't hammer a nail without understanding where it needs to go. But with ChatGPT, you can get sophisticated outputs without any understanding of the underlying concepts. This creates what psychologists call the illusion of knowledge. You feel like you understand something because you've read a well-written explanation, but you haven't actually processed the information deeply enough to internalize it. Remember when everyone was obsessed with Wikipedia rabbit holes? You'd start reading about medieval architecture and somehow end up learning about 16th century maritime trade routes at 3 a.m. That journey, that wandering through interconnected ideas, was actually building your knowledge web. Each article you read, each connection you made, was strengthening your ability to think critically and make novel associations. ChatGPT shortcuts this process entirely. You get the destination without the journey, the conclusion without the reasoning, the answer without the struggle. And here's the thing people don't want to admit: the struggle is where learning happens. A Stanford study from 2024 found that students who used AI to complete assignments performed significantly worse on subsequent tests, even when they had access to the same AI tools during the exam. They had become dependent on the AI's reasoning process rather than developing their own. The third problem is perhaps the most insidious. We're losing our ability to make decisions independently. There's a lot of surface level information on the internet about analysis paralysis, but the real issue runs deeper than just having too many options. Every time you ask ChatGPT, what should I do about, or help me decide between, you're outsourcing your judgment. And judgment, like any cognitive skill, requires practice to maintain. The more we rely on AI to weigh pros and cons, analyze situations, and recommend courses of action, the less confident we become in our own decision-making abilities. This is creating a generation of people who can't trust their own instincts. They need external validation for everything from career choices to what to have for dinner. Because apparently, we need artificial intelligence to tell us whether we prefer pizza or pasta. But here's what's really happening. We're developing what researchers call algorithmic anxiety, the fear that our own reasoning is somehow inferior to AI reasoning. We start to believe that ChatGPT's suggestions are inherently better than our own thoughts, simply because they're generated by a sophisticated system. The problem is that AI doesn't understand context the way humans do. It doesn't know your values, your history, your intuition, or the subtle factors that should influence your decisions. It's optimizing for generic, good answers, not for what's specifically right for you. Think about it like this. If you always followed GPS directions, you'd never develop an internal sense of direction. You'd never learn the shortcuts, never notice the patterns, never build that spatial awareness that comes from getting lost and finding your way back. Decision-making works the same way. Here's where it gets personal for a lot of people. We're witnessing what I call the creativity crisis. Not because people are less creative, but because they're losing confidence in their creative abilities. When you can generate a poem, a story, or a marketing campaign with a simple prompt, why would you struggle through the messy, frustrating process of creating something yourself? The common advice is that AI is just a tool to augment creativity, but that's missing the point entirely. Creativity isn't just about the final output, it's about the process, the dead ends, the terrible first drafts, the moment when you're stuck and suddenly have a breakthrough. That's where your unique voice develops. That's where you learn to trust your instincts and develop your aesthetic sense. But when you rely on AI for creative tasks, you're essentially renting creativity instead of building it. You might get impressive results, but you're not developing your own creative muscles. And over time, you start to doubt whether you have any creative ability at all. This reminds me of how Instagram filters affected people's self-perception. Suddenly, everyone's photos looked professionally edited, and unfiltered reality seemed inadequate by comparison. AI-generated content is doing the same thing to our creative output. Why share your rough, imperfect human creation when you could share something polished and AI-optimized? The fifth, and perhaps most troubling aspect, is how this affects our relationships and social interactions. People don't want to admit this, but many are now using ChatGPT to write emails, texts, and even dating app messages. They're outsourcing not just their thinking, but their personality. When you use AI to communicate, you're not just saving time, you're removing yourself from the conversation. Your authentic voice, with all its quirks and imperfections, gets replaced by optimized, sanitized AI prose. The result is communication that's technically effective but emotionally hollow. This is creating a strange paradox. We're becoming more connected through technology while becoming less authentically human in our interactions. People report feeling like they're losing touch with their own voice, their own way of expressing themselves. Remember when everyone used to have distinct texting styles? Some people wrote incomplete sentences, others used excessive abbreviations, some were emoji enthusiasts, others were grammar purists. These little quirks were part of what made digital communication personal. Now, AI is homogenizing our communication styles, making everyone sound suspiciously similar. But here's the thing, this isn't inevitable. The solution isn't to abandon AI entirely, but to be intentional about how we use it. Think of it like junk food. Occasional use probably won't hurt you, but if it becomes your primary source of nutrition, you're going to have problems. The key is to maintain what I call cognitive sovereignty, the ability to think independently even when AI is available. This means regularly engaging in activities that require sustained mental effort without AI assistance. Read long-form articles without summaries. Solve problems without immediately Googling the answer. Write first drafts without AI input. Practice sitting with uncertainty instead of immediately seeking AI resolution. When you're faced with a decision, spend time thinking through it yourself before consulting any external source, AI or otherwise. Your brain needs this exercise to stay sharp. Most importantly, remember that AI is trained on human output. It can recombine and optimize existing ideas, but it can't create genuinely novel concepts the way human consciousness can. Your thoughts, your perspective, your unique way of seeing the world, these are irreplaceable. The goal isn't to reject technological progress, but to use it in a way that enhances rather than replaces human cognition. We need to be the ones making the decisions about when to think for ourselves and when to seek assistance. Because at the end of the day, the most sophisticated AI is still just processing patterns in data. But you're processing the full complexity of human experience, and that's something worth preserving. The choice is yours, literally. Every time you reach for ChatGPT, you're making a decision about what kind of thinker you want to be. Choose wisely.